How long must we wait for our Republican colleagues to rise up to their responsibilities to the Constitution, to separation of powers and to rule of law, when President Trump brazenly violates that law? When are we going to hear the voices? It is unbelievable.
Welcome back. That was Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer this afternoon urging Senate Republicans to join Democrats in demanding information on both the call between President Trump and Ukraine's leader and the related whistleblower complaint. As the Trump administration continues to stonewall Congress on multiple fronts, pressure is building for Democrats to do whatever they have to do to get the information they need. This morning, President Trump told reporters he is not taking the talk of impeachment seriously. Maybe that's because the president says he didn't do anything inappropriate, or maybe it's because Democrats have been using the I word for months and don't have much to show for it. Hawaii Senator Mazie Hirono is on the Senate Judiciary Committee and joins us now to explain where Democrats go next. Senator, welcome. Where do Democrats go next?
Where they go next is where they should have been going for quite a while, and maybe we're getting there, I hope, and that is to start an impeachment inquiry on this president. And the latest revelations simply point out that we are not in normal times when you have a president who lies to the American people every single day and doesn't think that the rule of law applies to him. Sure, he'll stand there and say, I did nothing wrong. That's because he truly doesn't think he does anything wrong or that he can break the law. An impeachment inquiry is what we need.
Does he believe that because the Democrats haven't actually done an impeachment inquiry? They refuse to say, yes, we're going to impeach him?
Frankly, I don't care what he believes. All I know is that one thing he does believe is that the rule of law doesn't apply to him. That is why it is up to
Is that because of the rule of law has not applied to him so far? Is that because it hasn't had any consequences for him so far in his presidency?
Katie, I think that the consequences begin to be real for him when we begin an impeachment inquiry, and that's kind of where Jerry Nadler is going, and this is where he should continue to go. And this time we have the added situation, which is, as a lot of people are saying, this is really the tipping point. This is crossing the line here.
Who are a lot of people?
Well, you have Adam Schiff, for example, and I note that there is a letter from Nancy Pelosi who says this is a whole different situation if they do not get the whistleblower's complaint. You know, the whistleblower protection statute is very clear on its face. And what was supposed to happen after the IG determined that there was an urgent concern being expressed by the whistleblower and that it was credible, supposed to go to the Director of National Intelligence, who had no discretion. He's supposed to turn it over to the Intelligence Committee. But what does he do? No, he doesn't do that. He goes to the Attorney General Barr, whose goal in life is to support and protect this president. And so what happens? You have the Office of Legal Counsel in the Attorney General's office saying, no, you don't have to follow the law. What is this? It's very blatant. We need to get to the bottom of it. And the way you do that is to begin an impeachment inquiry.
I'd love to ask one of your Republican colleagues on about this, but we don't have one on the show today. Can you give us any insight?
Not to mention that they're all hiding, behind.
Can you give us any insight into any conversations that you may have had with your Republican colleagues? We have seen Mitt Romney tweet out that he is deeply concerned.
And you know what? We were supposed to feel grateful that at least one Republican who ran for president, no less, is able to express a deep concern. Really, I'd like to see him convince some of his other colleagues to step out of the shadows and do their jobs. We're supposed to be a separate branch of government. We're supposed to be holding the president accountable. And these are very serious allegations at this point from the whistleblower. And I'm not surprised that the administration is trying to negate what the whistleblower has come up with. I'm not surprised at all, because the president, Katie, cares about two things: protecting his, as we say in Hawaii, okole, and money. Those are the two driving forces for him. And right now, he's just so intent on protecting himself. He'll do and say anything. And apparently, he has an administration who's perfectly willing to go along with him. It's more than sad. It is tragic for our country. We need to do something about it, and that something is
let me
an impeachment inquiry.
Let me ask you this. How do you get your hands on that transcript? Is there a way for Democrats to do it or Congress to do it that does not involve the courts?
Thank goodness we still have the courts, because apparently with this president, he fights every single thing. There are dozens and dozens of lawsuits that have had to be filed based on every decision practically that this administration makes, or every executive order. So this is yet another instance where we're going to probably need to fight it out in the courts, because I don't expect other Republicans to suddenly get some guts and come forward and start asking and calling for the disclosure of the report. I don't expect that. So we're going to need to fight it out in the courts, where the president and Mitch McConnell are very, very busy populating with their ideologically oriented nominees for lifetime appointments.
Do you anticipate calling in Rudy Giuliani before a committee?
And what is he going to say? I mean, he's already admitted that he went to talk to the people in the Ukraine for the president.
Well, it sounds like that you're saying you don't need any more. You don't need any more information. That you already know what should be done. Do you believe that impeachment is inevitable?
No, you asked me specifically whether they should call Rudy Giuliani. You know, I'd like the committee. Probably it's a Judiciary Committee. To do what they need to do and establish a process whereby they can undertake an impeachment inquiry. So
do you think impeachment is inevitable?
It could be. No, nothing is inevitable, because the impeachment inquiry merely allows, very importantly, but it allows for information to come forward, and it is a prelude to an impeachment decision, which they have to then make. But the inquiry comes before the decision to impeach. There is a process to be followed, something that the president doesn't give a rip about.
Senator Mazie Hirono. Senator, thank you very much for joining us.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.